this is Katrina again, and I promised you guys a video on the books that you use for the CPC exam, and these here are the 3 books. This book here, the PCS book, you do get through CareerStep, but you do not use it. This book will be used for the CCS, and I do not believe you take the HCPCS when you take the CCS. I will be doing the CCS next. That'll be next month's exam, but so far I've only done the CPC exam, and I have passed it. Yay! Anyways, so back to the books. I'll start off with the diagnosis book. I normally refer to this one as a CM book. I think, honestly, most people actually refer to it as the ICD-10. Okay, so I'm a little bit backwards, and I apologize. Now, with this book, I have noticed some people code it using the alphabetic tabbing on both of them. For me, once I was doing it, I actually moved some of the tabbings on the this part of the index because of the fact that it seemed to be too much to very quickly go to each section. So what I did is I have marked, these are guidelines only, okay, and this is the 3 guidelines for me that always needed to be referenced to immediately. And so I've got my hypertension, my diabetes, my MIs. Okay, so with here, I used CCO's way of notating it, and then I went ahead on some of it and actually did my own notates for the coursework that I was doing. And so this, you've got your underlining, your highlighting, you have got to know. This is actually a really good example. You've got to know these. Period. The STEMIs and your MIs, they will be on your exam. You have got to really know when to code one, when not to code one. This is really, really good here. And then, of course, you've got, for me at least, it seemed to be the major ones to always flip to was going to be your diabetes and your history codes and your hypertension codes. So, for me, those seem to be the hardest ones to immediately locate, and you're always using them, so I mark those. Over here at the beginning of the book, I also always marked my guidelines. You want that easily accessible. The beginning of the ICD-10 book, I also use this book for notating, so that was really phenomenal for me. But this is just, as you can tell, it just goes over just stuff that you really don't need for the exam. So I've got my guidelines tabbed, then I went ahead and just grabbed the index portion, so that way if you happen to get an A, you're not going to have to look through all the guidelines first. So that way I know, oh, the index starts here. I also tabbed here, as you can tell. I thought it was going to be easier just to grab them from the top because for me, having repeated alphabet was too much tabs on the side. I could immediately just access them, and I'm telling you, you've got to be fast. When you've got 2 minutes to pull a code, you've got to be able to do it fast. So for me, this just seemed logical. I did have some tabs on the side. These tabs, they are semi-removable, and I had these ones here are really flimsy. I do not recommend those. I like the big ones for this, and then I like the smaller ones. I don't know if you can see how big or small these little ones are, but they're not as, let me see if I can flip it really quick. I apologize. They're not as big as these here. I use these big ones on my HCPCS, and I use these small ones on this side as well as this. But it just seemed to me to be a lot easier to do it up here. Index, of course, that's going to be your A, so I didn't start off with the A, but I literally just try to do it where I have enough on my fingertip, but not too big. And then, of course, the main ones that I seem to use here. I also went ahead and then I have a couple over here. I ran out of the little tabs, so I had to go back to the square ones. I will be updating those. I got to order some more from Amazon. I will post the link to the ones that I ordered to Amazon because I ended up ordering the wrong ones the first time. I was like, dog nabbit. But I like these, not these, excuse me, these here. These are really good. I also made sure to mark the neoplasms, your drug section, and your external mobility codes. You've got your place of occurrence, your, what is this one? What is it? I can't see it through here. This is status, external cause, and your tabular. So, for me, that was ideal. I also used the blank sides to write different notes or pertaining to it. And honestly, by doing it this way, it was really quick to just flip to it. You don't really, in my opinion, you don't really have as many diagnostic codes as the CPT. I feel more comfortable in the CPT book. I like the CPT book layout. I'm really good so far on diagnosis, but I don't care for how the layout in this book as much as a CPT, but I really like how I've actually done the code, tabbing the codes like this. But ideally in this book, I really did not do too much. I'm trying to see if I can find a page that shows any of my notes. There we go. I know I've got some over here. But there are some notes. For an example, you've got this one here. This is long-term only, so I made sure to notate that. Only code insulin if it is on the medical record. This is a very good note. This one here I was getting wrong, so I made sure to notate it. If it's not on the medical record, we cannot assume. And this one here, for me, I needed that in there. I've also got some notes down here. I've got some notes here. And I just try to make sure if it's something that I was struggling with or something that just needed to be memorized, I notated here. As you can see, I changed up a little bit. You've got to make sure you read these red notes. I took the CPC the first time and did not pass. And honestly, after thinking about it and looking back on it, I realized what I was not grabbing. And it really was the stupid stuff, which a lot of the instructors tell you. And it was just really just annoying because I was like, wow, I may have actually passed if I had just read a stupid red note. So now I make sure I read those. Back here, I've gone ahead and tabbed up the drug side because you do have the drug one here. And then I went ahead and did the Appendix E. And then I utilized these graphs amazingly. These graphs saved my life. You've got, this just kind of gives you an overview of it. All of the books have these. These are amazing because of the fact that you do not have any way, unless you've memorized the entire anatomy. I have not yet. I'm fairly okay with knowing what things are, but I have not completely memorized everything. So, and I think in my CM book, I've actually notated a lot more of these. I did not realize these were completely back here. I completely forgot about them. Up here, I was actually taking the last mock test. I was like, dude, I was trying to find something and I happened to go to the back of the book and I flipped through and I was like, there's bones, there's muscle. So I made sure to go ahead and add those notes. So this is the CM book. Not too many major notes on that one. I don't really think there was much of notes on the HCPCS. I did tab it. I don't really see a lot of people tabbing them, but for me, the graphs were the main thing to tab. I did notate this one. Now this one here, I notated these type of abbreviational things for me was really handy. So I did that. I did my graphs, and some of the graphs I do notate as well. I think it might be mainly in the CPT books, but these graphs are amazing. You've got your index to definitely do. Utilize the white. White equals notes, equals things that you struggle with. You've got your drug section. Definitely tabbing the drug section. There's quite a number of questions on your drugs and injections and all that good stuff. You do have modifiers in here. This one for me was a big one, to make sure you got those. And this is where I did do some highlighting in here. Then I made sure to grab my A's. And then it seemed to me that E's were grabbed up a lot in my mock exams. So I definitely went for my E's and my J's. I had quite a number of questions in the J's and the E's. So I made sure to mark those. Alright, and here is the CPT book. The CPC exam honestly has, I would say, more than 50% of the questions are going to be CPT. Alright, so with this one, how I've actually tabbed it and bubbled it and all that good stuff, okay? So with this one here, I actually put some extra codes, and I really love these tabs. I will put the link down below of where to get these tabs on Amazon, which these are the thick ones. This one is, I called it my abbreviations, and this one here, I ideally just notated things that I struggled with, and some anatomy things. White means, all this white means notes, okay? Notes, 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 alright? Then, ideally, you put it in the end. Now, I did do the CPT tabbing with their tabs. These are amazing. Now, the one thing I did not care for, and I don't know why they didn't do it this way, but I manually entered the numbers because when you're coding, they're not going to tell you, per se, in the respiratory section. They're going to be talking about respiratory, and you're going to have to just know it's going to be... Now, you will have to know that that will mean that it's in the 3 1000 section, okay? So this one here, what I've done is I just manually added the numbers. So you've got 300, this one's going to be 54, this one's going to be the 500s. So as you can tell, this here, it starts off here, and this one's going to start off at the 54s, okay? For me, it was a lot quicker, and especially on the back side, I just manually wrote the numbers this way, which I did not think the first time when I was writing them, and I put them a little bit too small on the upper side, so that's why it's got all these little ugly marks. However, okay, so that's how I marked my book here. I did add a couple of extra tabs. I added one for panels, okay, and then I also added a panels down here. It just seemed to me to be easier to grab the panels here or the panels here, because there's two different sections of panels, and in the middle of this book they have some really big ones that I don't really think I don't really think you use them as much as some of these here. So this one here is going to be your levels, and this one here, okay, is just the panels. And when you start doing it, you'll know what I mean when I say the levels, okay? And then I've got all of these just done normal, okay? Now, ideally, when we mention bubbling, highlighting, and underlining, this here, okay, is bubbled. As you can tell, this is a family, okay? This is what we call a family code, okay? Now, some instructors will have different terms that they use for these. I like to call it the mommy code, okay? So, you've got your mommy code, and then wherever the semicolon is, means that is where the subterm code is. So, this here shows the semicolon, which means that this is going to be, that's pretty much really and truly, that is the main portion of, that's mommy code, okay? This is secondary, okay? This is a subtone, okay? So this, as you can tell, is two different locations, okay? And this is very, very critical that you read through them and you bubble the family, okay? And some of these will have a lot more. So for an example, you've got, you can't really actually see, but there is a line in between this one. But you've got some of these. Now this one here, that's a deleted code. You've also got to watch for these bottom sections. But let me go back to the family code. So for an example, okay, you've got a mommy code here. This is for the lower extremity without contrast material, okay? So as you can see, there's a semicolon, okay? That semicolon means that this one here is this. This without contrast means that code is meaning without contrast. Now, let's just say they do something and it has contrast, okay? That means that that semicolon means this is ignored, okay? And this means this code is the with contrast code. This code is the without contrast code, but it still is this because this is mommy code. So instead of going with this sibling, we're going with this sibling, okay? Now, if we have a without contrast material followed by contrast material, then this code means it actually pretty much is both of these, but you have to use this code, okay? This is a bundle code, okay? Then you've also got, and this is really nice because in fact you know that this goes with this, and that's where you stop. So when you're doing coding and you're going fast, you do not have time to do like this one, okay? Take a look. So this is mommy code, okay? This is subterm, subterm, subterm. Oh, boom. Did you see that? I make sure I show, oh, there's more code. So that way you know to go to this page. Now, all of these is all within the same family. So when you're coding and you're trying to do one of these questions in less than 2 minutes, okay, you want to make sure when you're looking at this, you don't stop here. You make sure you're looking all the way up to here, because sometimes there might be more codes up here. This one actually just gives you what I like to call my tips, okay? This is saying do not report this code, which is going to be one of these babies, okay? This is 74150, 74150. So you cannot report this code or that code through. See that little dash? That means through that code. So any of these codes cannot be reported in conjunction, that means with this to this code. Which means I bet this code to this code may be actual contrast, okay? This is just saying that whatever this code is, and we can look it up here. So you've got 74261. So let's pull up 74261. So 74261. Okay. So this is a whole nother one. So this is without contrast material. Okay. and the codes that we were just at were talking about without contrast material followed by contrast material. So you might get a scenario where they've done both and it was followed by, but for some reason you think, oh, that means I need to go ahead and code contrast. And so you might go ahead and get that question of adding that one in there, and you think, oh, logically that might be it, or whatnot, you know. They say that there's no trick questions in it, but let me tell you, if you're not reading the question correctly, you're going to get it wrong, okay? You've got to make sure you read it, skim through some of the medical record, read what the actual question is, okay? This one also says, to report 3D rendering, you need to see these codes. So that means if the medical record is talking about this, you can't code this because this isn't 3D rendering, is it? Okay, so that means you're in the wrong section. So now you need to go over here, okay? Which means that if you've got multiple choice, which is the entire CPC is multiple choice, and it's got one of these codes, you know that this one is incorrect. So you can mark this one, rule this one out, and go with this one, okay? This one's also talking about do not report this for combined CT, abdomen, and pelvis study. See this code, okay? So now you know that if the medical record's talking about this, you need to go to this code instead, okay? So this is very, 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 very important. Like, extremely important, okay? And not all the codes have those. Some do. Then you've also got this one. Do not report this code in conjunction with this one, okay? Or sometimes it will say you cannot report this code, period, okay? Don't report it with this at all, okay? Which is ideally what this is actually saying. But then you also have some that will say do not report, like this one. This one's only once per CT, abdomen and pelvis examination, okay? It'll also say it's modifier exempt, or do not report, you know, whatnot with whatnot. You know, I mean, it honestly comes down to watching what these are. So for an example, you've got this one, okay? For a procedure, use this. So you need to be looking. This is its own code, which means I don't have to turn the page. See how I did that on the top? That means it's its own code. So I don't have to waste time flipping back over here saying, oh, was there any more codes? I can just look at this one and realize, oh, this is it. So this bubbling, this family code, even though it's only a single person, is quite beneficial. Now this one has 3 kids, okay? This one has those subterms, okay? So that way you know, if you've got all these questions, or questions that have all these different type of codes, and you will know that these codes go together, those codes go together, those codes go together. That way you're not getting mixed up. Oh, this one and that one, you know, and trying to say, oh, it's only this one because, you know, I want to see if I can find some that have, oh, I know, the surgery section has a lot of, I'm trying to think here. It's got a lot of, like, the exact same thing, except for the fact the location's different. So, for an example, you're looking at the mommy code, mommy code. So as you can see, these are family. The differences, okay? These are all ideally the same, except this is going to be for the face, scalp, eyelids, mouth, neck, dun, 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 dun. This is going to be for the trunk, arms, legs. This is the first 100 square centimeters or less than blah, 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 blah. This is for the first da, da, da. This is for each additional. This is for each additional. What's the difference between these two mommy codes? Location. This is for the trunk, arms, legs. This is for the face, scalp, eyelids, okay? You've got this one down here, which, I mean, this is an actual, these are two different things, so. But as you can see, like, these are the exact same, okay? The difference. These are location. This is face, scalp, eyelids, mouth. This one's going to be trunk, arms, legs. I mean, every one of these is going to have the same except for a couple of differences. You've also got to realize split thickness. These split thicknesses and total excisions and all that you've got to watch for these type of things. So underlining, highlighting, making your notes. There's a lot of good graphs in here. What I typically do in this one is I actually go to the beginning. I make my notes, but I normally, let me see here, will make my notes on the body parts. If I'm having issues of where something's located or needing to memorize something, I actually utilize the graphs that are in the book and just write everything in it, because of the fact you will get questions on your interspaces in between discs. I want to make sure I know how to do that, okay? You've got to know how to count these, okay? A lot of people apparently get this mixed up. I heard an instructor on a webinar that I watched that they failed it, ideally because possibly of this. Now, there's a lot of questions. You're going to have questions on HCPCS. You're going to have questions on diagnosis. You're going to need to know your guidelines. You're going to need to know what codes go with what. Now, your guidelines are ideally going to be right in front of each section. So this one here, you got your pericardium, and you've got your little family codes, okay? And you can see here, for radiological supervision and interpretation, use that code. That's very, very important. You need to do that, okay? This is the guideline for it. You need to make sure you read and know the guidelines per each section. You've got your pacemaker and implantable defibrillator, okay? You've got to know exactly how this goes. A single chamber, a dual chamber, a biventricular pacing, okay? You've got to know this because they will ask you and they will switch some of this up and kind of confuse you a bit. But if you know your guidelines and you know what can be coded with what, it's going to extremely help you. With this here, circling and knowing what sections go together is extremely helpful because you've got to go so fast. Heather's notes really goes over a lot of this. I really recommend her notes the best. I have done CCOs. I did not find them, for me, as beneficial because I like to hear it and she talks and I like to listen. So for me, listening to someone going through it, it just, my computer in my head just computes a lot better. But ideally, you've got to make sure you know a lot of this. But you've got a lot that you've got to make sure you can quickly reference because, for an example, okay, in this, I have the link for how to obtain this mock exam. This mock exam is for CPC. It's 150 questions. It's through the medical billing and coding location site, and I'll have my link. It's like $40, I think. They give you some study tips, which is actually really good. They give you some medical terminology, some anatomy things. Honestly, really and truly, 2-3 days before your test exam, I would go through the whole thing. Just read through it, listen to it, all of that good stuff, because you really need a refresher. And I think how they do it in their little study guide is really awesome. But with theirs, I printed it out. Do not look at my markings because I don't even know if I graded this sheet or not. I've done these tests like 2 or 3 times because I was speed testing. I have my little silent timer. I would set it up and I would put it to, like, for an example, this is 4 questions. So I would put it for 4 minutes. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. 4 questions times 2 is not 4. It's 8. So I would put 8 minutes. And if I'm done with this within the 8 minutes, I would just turn it around. Just 2 more. Just add 4 onto that. Whatever was left. If, let's just say I had 1.5 minutes left, I would just add 4 to it. So I'd have 5.5 minutes. And it just, for me, was better pacing because you only get 5 hours and 40 minutes to do it. Okay. But for an example with this is what I'm talking about when they have multiple codes. Okay. So you've got your, this is a condensed medical record. Okay. This is what they've done. This is your question. What, what's the patient tolerated, blah, 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 without complication. So you're like, okay, I need to know what they've done. Okay, it's not quite a question on this one. This one's just the medical record. So now you've got to look these codes up. Now you've got to do the elimination. So you've got 2 codes that are the same here. Let's go ahead. Those, are the same. So you mark those. Then you might mark these. Now you've got, your modifiers. You need to know, can you modify that? Does that modifier go with that modifier? Okay. Some modifiers you can't do. Some codes you can't put together. You've got to know which ones go together, which ones don't. So if you're looking these up, you've also got to be able to quickly go to your modifiers back here and be able to say, oh, see, that was pretty good. I actually grabbed it. The biggest modifier issue, I think that they, not really issue, but the biggest modifier that I think they put on it is your discontinued and your reduced. If you reduce the service or if you completely stop the procedure, what's going on? You got to read through that medical record and figure out, why did they stop? Why did they discontinue it? Why did they reduce it? What happened? Was it an actual distinct procedure that they did? Was it related to the other one? Was it unplanned? Was it a planned? Was it a staged? Okay, there was quite a number of staged questions on there. So really and truly you need to know. Now, what's funny is the Cat 3 one, I did not bubble highlight. I really did not really utilize this all that much. I think there might be 1 or 2 questions in some of them. I don't think I might have had any, but I still made sure I did my notes. I made sure I did all of my bubbling. When I first started the bubbling, I did the EM section and I did anesthesia. And then I kind of went through some sections that I thought would be hard. And then I started doing my mock tests. When I did my mock test, and I hit some of these sections, I'm trying to find where I was at when I realized, I was like, oh my heavens, if I had actually had this whole thing bubbled, I would know where it stops. But I didn't have it bubbled, and that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to spend the time to bubble it, okay? Because some of these are, that one's actually really, really long. So you've got some of these that are huge. But you need to know, where does it stop? Where does this one stop? Where does this stop? You know, you need to know, oh, this one actually continues on to the next page. You know, you need to know certain things on it. It's just easier to see it, okay? And that's when I think I was somewhere in the surgery section when I realized I need to go ahead and actually bubble the whole book. So I spent an additional 3 days, and I bubbled, highlighted, underlined as much as I could on the notes. I did write some of the notations down that Heather does. I don't do all of them. I couldn't handle it. I did start doing that in, I think it's the EM section. No, it's the anesthesia section. I started doing one of them. I did a whole lot, and I realized it was just too much for my eyeballs. I just couldn't see it. So I just did the main obvious ones. But honestly, notate them. You've got to know where you're at. I mean, some of these you've got to know. Are you in the veins? Are you in the arteries? That's huge, okay? They're going to question you on this. But you've got to be able to know it. So that way when you have a career in medical coding, you know how to fastly do it, because you will be timed and you have to do so many charts in a day for your employer. So, you know, a lot of this is very, very helpful. And I would try to do a video of actually how you're doing codes and how you kind of pull out. It's just really kind of hard to explain it because of the fact that you've got to read through it, and you've got to know where they're at in the body. You've got to know what you're allowed to code, what you're not allowed to code. The coursework through CareerStep is pretty amazing because it goes over that. And it's really kind of confusing for someone like myself who's actually never been in the medical side. All my experience has been in telecommunications, sales through AT&T, Quest, Bell South. And I didn't know anything about medical. Now that I know a little bit, I love it. It's actually quite enjoyable. It gets a little bit frustrating here and there doing the coursework because it's like, oh my God, there's so much to take in. Once you get the gist of it, it kind of comes together. It kind of clicks. But a lot of these, you know, you've got some true and false. You don't really have a whole lot of those. Then you've got some where you have to read through it, you know, and some that's going to be asking you certain questions, okay? I don't know if that's clearing up here. But you've also got to know injections, IVs, medicine, your panels. You know, you've got to make sure if you're on the left side, the right side, if it's a certain modifier that needs to be there, if it's not a certain modifier. You also need to make sure you can't report certain codes with other codes. If it's, you know, benign versus, you know, if it's possibly cancerous. You've got to know how to do this. I know that there's actually questions in this section. This is one of those sections I didn't care for it too much. Now that I have learned a lot more. And pretty much after I failed my first CPC, I actually they had those notes, and watched a webinar every single day. They're like between, I would say, 45 minutes to an hour and a half. There's a couple of them that's 2 hours long. Amazing. I like to hear it. I like someone to be reading it. I can follow along. I can pause it, write my little notes, highlight it, bubble it, re-listen to it. Listen to what she's saying because there's a lot of information. I would highly recommend making sure you've got this, you know, notated, highlighted, circled, all that good stuff, because there's so much information, so much to do. Because honestly, I think by the time you get to this point in life, you really want to make sure you're really good. At least for me, I want to make sure I'm really, really good at what I'm doing, so that way I can be the best one out there. And I want to progress in my career and get really, really good, and just, you know, go up and up. Maybe, you know, become a manager or a trainer, or, you know, who knows what in the future. Now that I'm done with my CPC, I will be sitting next for the CCS. I'm very excited, though, because I finally got through. Yay! But I just wanted to give you a rundown of the 3 books that we use for the CPC, which are these babies. And let you see how I coded it. I always talk about the bubbling and highlighting and all that good stuff. That's how I've done mine. I will post a link down below on the tabs, as well as the time I used and some of the resources that I use for my practice exams. And then I would try to do one kind of highlighting how to actually pull codes and do medical coding and billing and kind of give you just what actually it is, because I was kind of underneath completely kind of a different impression. I love it now. Now I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But anyway, and then my next one will be on this book, which is similar to the CPT, but totally different. But anyways, till next time, thank you for watching. Have a good day.